Hello, welcome. My name is Szabo. I'll be moderating this session on rethinking or looking at the U.S.-Turkish relationship. I am the Executive Director of the Transatlantic Academy, which is based at the German Marshall Fund here in Washington, and we bring together European and American scholars to work on a single issue of transatlantic importance. And last year we did Turkey, and we had 6 scholars here working on Turkey, and we produced a report which was entitled Getting to Zero. And I could say, and I wanted to thank Gunal, especially in the Middle East Institute. We had a very good workshop last year together, and we look forward to continuing to cooperate. At this time last year, when the report came out, things looked a lot different in the U.S.-Turkish relationship than they do today. This was right after the Gaza flotilla incident, which had really sort of poisoned, I would say, Turkish-Israeli relations, and certainly had a damaging effect on the U.S.-Turkish relationship. We know about Turkey and Brazil had negotiated an agreement with Iran, which was then turned down by the U.S., and then Turkey, of course, voted against the UN sanctions in the UN, much to the consternation of the Obama administration and the Congress. The promising rapprochement between Turkey and Armenia stalled, and a vote in the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the genocide issue failed by a single vote, and it resulted in the temporary withdrawal of Turkey's ambassador from Washington. At that time, Secretary Gates was blaming the Europeans for a lot of the problems, saying that if they had been more welcoming to Turkey, perhaps they wouldn't have moved so independently on Iran and other issues. Well, a lot has happened in the past year since all that happened. Turkey is now seen by many in the Middle East as a model in the wake of the Arab Spring. And at the same time, however, its policy of zero problems with neighbors is being undermined by the actions of the Assad regime in Syria, and the unraveling of Turkey's efforts to mediate between Syria and Israel, not to mention the implications of the return of Egypt to the Middle East equation and what that means for Turkey's role and Iran's role in Syria. And U.S. policy in Libya and its broader policy dilemmas in the Middle East seem to presage a diminished American role in the region, due in part to its dire economic and fiscal situation, which we saw again last night in the President's speech, the overstretching of the American military and American treasury in Afghanistan and Iraq, the growing strategic challenge of China, and a growing desire of the American public to focus on America's problems. At the same time, within the last week or so, we've had a strengthened Prime Minister Erdogan, who came out of the elections looking even stronger. So the U.S. will now look to Turkey to play, I think, an increasingly key role in the region, especially in Syria, but beyond. While Turkey remains concerned with the development of Iran's nuclear program. What does this all mean for the U.S.-Turkish relationship? Will it become more central, or will there be more drift? Is Turkey too big and successful for a declining West? We could ask these questions. I would also throw in, how will the U.S. and Turkey manage their relationship with Europe? The EU's accession issue, Cyprus, and of course the relationship between the EU and NATO and Turkey's role in that as well. So we have, I think, 3 excellent panelists to discuss this wide range of issues, and they will each have about 14 to 15 minutes to discuss this. We've been bargaining on this. It's sort of like being back in Istanbul. But I will try to be somewhat strict as the chairman, so we have enough time for questions from this very large and warm audience. Our first speaker is Professor Dr. Mustafa Aydin, who is Professor of International Relations and President of Katulis University in Istanbul. And as you can see from, you have his bio in front of you. He's the Director of the International Policy Research Institute in Ankara as well, and President of the International Relations Council of Turkey. He knows both the U.S. and Europe very well. He was a Fulbright Scholar at the Kennedy School at Harvard. He was also a research fellow at the EU Security Institute in Paris. He's written extensively on security policy, including recently International Security Today, Understanding Change and Debating Security, and Turkish Foreign and Security Policy. So he will speak first. He'll be followed by Katulis, who is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, who is a very well-known specialist on U.S. national security policy, especially in the Middle East, Iraq, Arab-Israeli conflict, and Pakistan. He has all the good issues to deal with. Good luck on that. You must have short nights sleeping without all those things to worry about. He's a co-author of the Prosperity Agenda, a book on the U.S. national security, and he has served as a consultant to the U.S. government and private corporations, as you can see from his resume. And finally, Jonathan J. Solomon, who is a journalist with the Wall Street Journal, who's, I guess, one of that, I'm not sure dying breed, but important breed of foreign correspondents who actually spends time outside of the U.S. covering the world. He's written from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He's been nominated for 3 Pulitzer Prizes, and I was looking at his to see his bio here, and I was really impressed by the fact he did an expose on North Korea's drug trade and Kim Jong-il's secret slush fund, and is still alive to tell us about it. So, he must be living in a witness protection program somewhere. But it's good to have you here as well. And he's also done a lot of work on the war on terror, and he will be providing his comments as well. So with that as background, I'll turn it over to Professor Aydin.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start with thanking Middle East Institute and Gönül Tol for inviting me here to speak today. We heard both ambassadors, to speak about current issues and positive aspects of the relationships. Being an academic and not working to any government, let me speak about wider historical context and doom and gloom on Turkish-American relations. Although we have a history of about 200 years of relationship, the real contours of the relationship were set up during the Second World War and during the Cold War. 2 atypical periods for international relations. So they put specific limitations on policy choices of both countries. During this era, during the Cold War, Turkish-US relationship gained a strategic core on mutual threat perception on the one hand, and also mutual understanding of Turkey's strategic importance to the United States. This led to the creation of what I would call alliance partnership during the Cold War, where written agreements were negotiated and signed between 2 countries regularly. This is something that I give an importance, that 2 countries regularly during the Cold War negotiated the structures of their relationship and put in writing what kind of relationship they were going to have. First of which was 1947 agreement on aid to Turkey based on Marshall Plan and Truman Doctrine. The last of which was signed in 1980 Defense and Economic Cooperation Agreement, which tells a lot, actually. The last agreement between Turkey and the United States that actually structures and governs the relationship was signed in 1980, which was extended in 1986. So it's still during the Cold War. Nothing so far since the end of the Cold War has been signed to redefine the relationship. Of course, there has been statements of purposes, memorandum of understanding, press releases, and etc., but there hasn't been a treaty since the end of the Cold War between 2 countries. The framework that was established during the Cold War carried us till the end of the Cold War, which then brought about a systemic evolution, a paradigm shift in both world politics and also Turkish-American relationship, and enhanced focus on regional rather than global issues. So these 3 events or intakes created a Turkish-US relationship, evolved from a simple alliance partnership to what they then called a strategic partnership, which I believe encountered problems from its very inception. First of all, the negotiated structure that defined the relationship during the Cold War could not keep up with the challenges of the post-Cold War era. The fact that the relationship is still governed by 1980 DECA agreement that was signed and negotiated during the Second Cold War and reflecting the power structure of this Cold War was a problematic issue. Secondly, calling the relationship strategic in the early 1990s was, I think, at best an effort to define a transition period